These ancient buildings and structures shouldn't exist built by hands we can't explain, in places no one can understand. Off the eastern coast of Pohnpei Island in Micronesia lies one of the most baffling and breathtaking ancient cities on Earth, Nan Madol. Stretching across nearly 100 artificial islets, this labyrinth of stone ruins floats like a forgotten memory above the Pacific, laced together by a network of narrow canals. Some call it the Venice of the Pacific, but Nan Madol is older, stranger, and built with techniques that still leave modern engineers scratching their heads. What makes Nan Madol truly astonishing isn't just its scale, it's the fact that it was built on top of a coral reef, without modern tools, cranes, or cement. Massive basalt logs, some weighing more than 50 tons, were stacked with geometric precision. There are no local quarries nearby. The stone had to be transported from across the island, somehow floated across the water, then lifted and placed into formation. Some blocks are as tall as a 2-story house and look almost laser-cut. No one knows how they moved them. Local legend says the builders had help from powerful forces or flying dragons. Scientists are less poetic, but even they admit they don't have a solid answer. The city itself is laid out with eerie order. There are platforms that appear to have supported temples or royal residences. Some enclosures have high stone walls, inner courtyards, and central altars, though the jungle has crept in, reclaiming the gaps between stone. Standing in the middle of it today, the silence is almost overwhelming, broken only by the gentle splash of water and rustling palm leaves. It feels like a movie set something between Lost and Indiana Jones, except it's real. And no one's sure who wrote the script. What we do know is that Nan Madol was the ceremonial and political seat of the Sodler dynasty. But here's the catch: the Sodler were said to have arrived long after the city was already standing. Archaeological dating suggests the earliest construction began as far back as the 8th or 9th century, though some researchers argue the foundations are older still. Even the dynasty's oral traditions hint that they didn't build it, they inherited it. Some researchers have compared Nan Madol's engineering to that of Machu Picchu or the pyramids. Others go even further, calling it evidence of a now-lost seafaring civilization that may have once connected distant cultures across the ocean. There's no concrete proof for that, but Nan Madol continues to challenge every assumption we have about ancient capabilities. It's as if someone skipped ahead a few pages in the architectural playbook. And perhaps the strangest part? Despite its scale, Nan Madol has never been fully excavated. The dense mangroves and the soft coral foundations make it a nightmare for traditional archaeological work. Which means for now, most of its secrets remain underwater, tangled in roots and silence. Scientists now believe that Gunung Padang could be the oldest known step pyramid in the world, one that shatters everything we thought we knew about human history. What sets Gunung Padang apart isn't just its age, it's the depth. Using ground-penetrating radar, researchers have found that the visible megalithic structure on the surface is only the tip of a much larger, multi-layered construction buried deep underground. Some of the lowest layers could date back to 20,000 years ago, long before the rise of agriculture, and long before the Great Pyramid of Giza was even a sketch in the sand. The structure itself is made up of enormous volcanic stone blocks, arranged in terraces and platforms that form a geometric pattern not seen elsewhere in the region. The stones weren't just tossed there randomly, they were precisely placed, forming straight lines, right angles, and corridors that suggest architectural planning. It's not just a pile of rocks, it's a blueprint carved into the earth itself. What makes Gunung Padang so controversial is how it messes with the traditional timeline. If those lower layers really are as old as they seem, it means that someone, a highly organized group of people, was building complex, monumental architecture at a time when most humans were still thought to be hunter-gatherers. That idea challenges mainstream archaeology, and not everyone is comfortable with it. Critics argue that the deeper layers may be natural formations or simply modified by later cultures. But the Indonesian research team, led by geologist Dr. Danny Hillman, insists that the site shows signs of human modification throughout, including rooms, chambers, and even what may be a man-made ventilation system, all buried under volcanic soil. Adding to the mystery is the local folklore. Gunung Padang has long been considered sacred, known as the Mountain of Enlightenment. Ancient stories speak of kings, supernatural beings, and hidden chambers beneath the surface. Until recently, most of those tales were treated like harmless myths, Now they don't sound so far-fetched. Unlike the sleek columns and refined carvings of nearby temples, the Osireion is built with hulking granite blocks, some weighing over 60 tons. These aren't the kind of stones you casually move with a few hundred workers and ropes. The design is stark, almost minimal towering walls, massive pillars, and a central pool surrounded by a sunken chamber. It looks more like something you'd expect in Peru or even at Stonehenge than in traditional Egyptian architecture. What really throws researchers off is its depth. The Osireion sits far below the ground level of Seti's temple, suggesting it was already ancient when the pharaoh decided to build beside it. And here's the kicker. There's no solid record of who built it, when, or why. Seti seemed to treat it with reverence, not ownership, almost like he was preserving a relic from a forgotten era. Some Egyptologists have suggested that the Osireion was meant to represent the tomb of Osiris, the god of the underworld. That would make sense symbolically, considering its watery core and underground design. But there's a gap between symbolism and engineering, and the truth is, no one really knows how or why this monument was built the way it was. The erosion patterns on the granite pillars are also suspiciously deep, possibly caused by prolonged exposure to water. This has led some geologists to argue that the Osireion might date back to a much wetter period in Egypt's history, potentially thousands of years before the rise of dynastic civilization. If true, that would make it one of the oldest and most advanced structures in North Africa. The Osireion doesn't shout with golden statues or hieroglyphic stories. Instead, it whispers through silence and mass. It speaks in weight, in depth, in scale. It feels like a message left behind by a civilization we barely understand, one that might have known things we've only just begun to rediscover. And yet, despite its mystery, the Osireion remains on the fringe of Egypt's tourist trail. Most visitors walk through the decorated halls of Seti's temple, never realizing that just a few steps away lies something that could rewrite history. High above the ancient city of Cusco in Peru sits a fortress that honestly just defies logic. Sacsayhuamán. To this day, it remains one of the most extraordinary examples of stone construction on the planet. And it's not because of how grand it is, but because of how perfect. Massive stones, some weighing over 100 tons, were carved and fitted together so precisely that not even a sheet of paper can slide between them. There's no mortar, no filler, no glue, just stone against stone, locked like a three-dimensional puzzle forged by giants. And you know, these aren't ordinary blocks. Each one has a unique shape, often with 12 or more angles. This wasn't some kind of assembly line work. Every stone had to be shaped individually to match the ones around it, and then moved often uphill into place. Modern engineers admit they'd struggle to replicate it today, even with cranes and laser cutting. And yet, whoever built Sacsayhuamán did it with bronze or stone tools, centuries before the Spanish ever arrived in South America. Mainstream history attributes the fortress to the Inca Empire, but even some Incan oral traditions suggest it was built by an earlier people. The Incas, as skilled as they were, might have inherited and expanded it rather than constructed it from scratch. Parts of the lower walls look older, rougher, and more weathered, as if they've been standing for far longer than official timelines allow. Then there's the layout. From above, Sacsayhuamán takes on a zigzag pattern, like the teeth of a giant saw. Some believe it mimics the shape of lightning, which held spiritual significance. Others suggest it was a military strategy, forcing invaders to zigzag uphill under fire. But there's more. Nearby carved stones resemble thrones, drainage systems, and even what some researchers say could be ancient energy lines or water channels. And the mysteries don't stop at the surface. Beneath the fortress are a series of tunnels and chambers, some partially collapsed, others completely unexplored. One tunnel is rumored to stretch all the way to Cusco Cathedral, though no one has made it through. Whether that's folklore or fact is still up for debate, but the air of secrecy surrounding Sacsayhuamán is hard to miss. Even in ruins, it feels deliberate engineered to last forever. No wonder so many visitors leave convinced they've walked through something beyond ordinary history. It doesn't just challenge our understanding of the past, it dares us to question what humans were truly capable of or whether someone else got a head start. Buried beneath the quiet town of Rockwall, Texas, lies a discovery so strange that it actually gave the town its name literally. Back in the 1850s, settlers digging a well struck something unexpected, a massive underground wall made of cut stone. At first, they thought it was just a natural formation, but the deeper they dug, the weirder it got. The wall stretches for miles with giant sandstone blocks stacked on top of one another, forming long, straight lines, right angles, and even what appears to be archways. Some of the blocks are fitted together so tightly that they honestly resemble brickwork. For decades, locals debated whether it was just an odd quirk of geology or a relic left behind by an unknown civilization. Geologists who studied the structure claimed it was a natural sandstone formation created by jointing and erosion. But not everyone was convinced. In the 1970s and again in the 1990s, researchers and independent investigators returned to the site, and some claimed to find inscriptions, metal rings embedded in the stone, and signs of tool marks. Unfortunately, full access to the formation is difficult. Much of it remains underground, buried beneath homes and businesses, or simply sealed off. What keeps the story alive is how the rock wall doesn't behave like any ordinary natural feature. The stones are consistent in size, laid out in regular patterns, and in some cases appear to have been mended as if someone tried to repair or reinforce it long ago. One theory suggests it was once a colossal retaining wall for a city that predates recorded history in North America. Others point to electromagnetic anomalies in the area and claim there's more going on below the surface than we understand. There are no confirmed artifacts, no skeletons, no pottery shards, nothing that firmly connects the wall to a known culture. And yet its presence challenges the narrative that ancient North America was sparsely populated by simple societies. If the wall is artificial, it would be one of the oldest and largest man-made structures in the hemisphere. Deep in Cambodia's jungle, Prohm sleeps beneath a canopy of leaves, tangled in roots and time. Once part of the mighty Angkor Temple complex, it was built in the 12th century by the Khmer Empire as a sprawling Buddhist monastery. But today, nature has reclaimed it. Completely massive trees grow from rooftops, their roots gripping the walls like ancient hands. Unlike other temples in the region, Prohm wasn't fully restored. Its collapsed corridors, moss-covered carvings, and half-buried passageways were left just as they were found, haunting, raw, and undeniably powerful. Walking through its ruins feels like stepping into a forgotten world. Stone towers lean under the weight of centuries, and doorways seem to open into another dimension. There's something mysterious about the way it blends with the jungle, like it grew there rather than being built. Some parts of the temple, based on surviving carvings and layouts, suggest it might have once looked completely different, sharper, cleaner, monumental before the jungle swallowed them. Strangely, some of the stone reliefs depict animals that don't quite match anything native to the region, adding to the questions surrounding the site. Prohm doesn't just tell a story of a lost civilization. It shows what happens when time, nature, and human ambition merge and then quietly vanish beneath the vines. In eastern China, near the village of Xi'an Baikong, sits one of the most puzzling construction feats of the ancient world, the Longyou Caves. At first, locals thought they were just flooded ponds. But in 1992, when a few villagers pumped one dry, they uncovered something mind-blowing: an enormous man-made cavern, carved entirely by hand into solid siltstone. Then they drained another, and another. In total, 24 of these massive underground chambers were found, each the size of a cathedral. What makes them so mysterious isn't just the scale, though. They're enormous, but the precision. Every wall is smooth and straight, carved with parallel chisel marks that run perfectly even across thousands of square feet. The ceilings are flat and uncracked, the pillars evenly spaced. Some rooms are nearly 100 feet tall, with interiors so vast that they echo like natural caves. But these aren't natural. Every inch was carved by human hands. And here's the real kicker: no one knows who built them. No ancient texts mention the caves, no tools have ever been found, no debris, no miscuts, no abandoned stones. It's as if the builders vanished without leaving a trace. The estimated volume of material removed from all 24 caves would have been nearly 1 million cubic meters, a staggering amount, especially for an era with no advanced machinery. Yet, there's no nearby dump site, no piles of leftover stone. Where did it all go? Some of the caves have curious carving symbols, birds and fish etched into walls, but even these offer no clues. The oldest records from the region make no mention of any underground complex, even though these caves would have taken decades, maybe centuries, to complete. The labor, planning, and engineering are beyond what's expected of any known civilization in the area at the time. Theories range from military shelters to underground temples, storage depots to secret gathering places. Some fringe ideas even suggest contact with advanced knowledge either lost or passed down through unknown means. And while that remains unproven, the fact stands no one alive today could explain exactly how or why these caves were built. Despite being open to the public, the Longyou Caves remain largely unstudied. There's no definitive archaeological campaign underway, no mainstream rush to uncover more. And maybe that's what makes them even more haunting. They exist in plain sight. Yet no one knows their story. In the desolate mountains of western China, near the edge of the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau, looms a formation that has fueled rumors for decades, the so-called Mount Baigong Pyramid. Jagged and rugged, the mountain doesn't look like a typical pyramid at first glance. But at its base and in the surrounding area lie hundreds of rusty, tube-like structures embedded into the rock, and no one truly knows what they are. These pipes, as they've been called, vary in size, with some as thick as a human leg. They appear to run vertically and horizontally, some plunging deep into the mountain, others crossing the surrounding lake beds. Some are fused into rock, as if they were laid down before the stone solidified a geological impossibility, according to some skeptics. Chinese scientists have conducted limited studies and found that many of the pipes are composed of iron oxide, silicon dioxide, and calcium materials that could form naturally, but also resemble old metallurgy. Strangely, some of the samples contained organic matter, such as plant remnants, even though they were pulled from deep underground. Even more puzzling, the iron content in some samples showed signs of advanced aging, hinting at immense antiquity. Of course, mainstream explanations suggest these are fossilized tree roots or natural mineral formations that just happen to look artificial. But not everyone is convinced. The fact that the area is remote and highly restricted, with official access nearly impossible without government approval, only adds to the speculation. Some fringe theorists go further, suggesting that the Baigong Formation could be the remnants of a long-lost civilization or something even more exotic. While there's no direct evidence to support those claims, the sheer oddity of the pipes, coupled with their unknown origin and limited scientific follow-up, keeps the story alive. Not far from the site is Lake Tosan, where similar pipe-like formations can be found beneath the surface. Some divers who've explored it reported symmetrical arrangements of stone beneath the mud, as if remnants of an underwater structure lie buried in silence. Whether Mount Baigong is a natural freak of geology or a genuine archaeological anomaly, one thing is certain: its remote setting, unexplained features, and restricted access have helped it become one of the most mysterious and quietly debated places in modern China. A place where science stops and speculation begins. Beneath the streets of Paola, Malta, hidden from view and unknown for centuries, lies a subterranean marvel unlike anything else on Earth, the Hypogeum of Ħal Saflieni. Discovered accidentally in 1902 during construction work, this massive underground complex dates back over 5,000 years and still leaves researchers speechless with its complexity, craftsmanship, and eerie atmosphere. Carved directly into solid limestone, the Hypogeum is a multi-level labyrinth of chambers, corridors, and altars that descend over 30 feet below the surface. It wasn't just a tomb. It was a sanctuary, a ritual space, a world unto itself. The builders left no records, no inscriptions, no blueprints, only perfectly shaped rooms, acoustically tuned chambers, and strange architectural flourishes that seem to serve more than just practical purposes. One of the most baffling features is the Oracle Room, a small chamber with curved walls that produces powerful sound resonance. A low voice uttered inside can echo throughout the entire structure. Researchers say the frequency range enhances brain activity in listeners, possibly inducing trance states or altered perception. Was this intentional? And if so, how did Neolithic people understand sound in such a refined way? Even more curious is the fact that no tools were ever found on site. No chisels, no hammers, no debris piles, just smooth, carved walls and spiral motifs etched in red ochre. And though thousands of human bones were found, the absence of children's remains raised questions until they were discovered in a separate, hard-to-access chamber years later. Adding to the mystery is the disappearance of a number of skeletal remains during the early excavations. Some researchers in the mid-20th century claimed that elongated skulls were among the finds, but official records barely mention them. Whether those reports were exaggerations or not, they've added fuel to speculation about a lost culture with unusual physical traits, or possibly visitors from afar. The Hypogeum was sealed off for decades to prevent damage from humidity and tourism, and even now access is highly restricted. Only a handful of people are allowed in each day, and photography is banned. Its quiet, shadowed halls still hold more questions than answers. Despite its age, the Hypogeum feels alien, not just old, but otherworldly. A monument to something ancient, deliberate, and deeply symbolic that we've yet to fully understand. Right next to the paws of Egypt's Great Sphinx, hidden in plain sight, stands one of the most overlooked yet astonishing structures in Giza, the Sphinx Temple. Unlike the more famous pyramids and decorated tombs nearby, this temple is built in a style that feels raw, brutal, and ancient, as if it belongs to a different era entirely. The walls of the Sphinx Temple are made of massive limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, stacked with tight precision. These stones weren't hauled from distant quarries, they were carved directly from the bedrock during the excavation of the Sphinx itself. In other words, the temple and the statue are deeply connected, built together as part of a singular, gigantic engineering project. But here's where things get strange. While nearby structures are filled with hieroglyphs, colorful frescoes, and elaborate carvings, the Sphinx Temple is completely bare. No inscriptions, no artwork, no signs of ritual or burial, just silence and stone. Geologists have pointed to deep erosion marks on the Sphinx enclosure walls, not caused by wind, but by water. Lots of water. This has led some researchers to suggest that the temple and the Sphinx date back to a time when Egypt experienced heavy rainfall, potentially thousands of years earlier than traditional timelines allow. Mainstream Egyptologists remain cautious, dating the temple to around 2500 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. But if the weathering is accurate, the structure could predate him by thousands of years, placing it before the rise of dynastic Egypt itself. There's also something off about the construction style. It resembles pre-Incan sites in South America more than the refined symmetry of later Egyptian temples. Huge blocks laid with simple but effective interlocking joints radiate a sense of permanence, like it was built to last forever, not to dazzle. While much attention has gone to the pyramids and the Sphinx's enigmatic face, the Sphinx Temple may be the key to an even older story, one buried in stone and sand, and nearly forgotten. It may not be flashy, but it holds secrets the kind that make you question whether we really know who the first builders of Egypt were. That's about it. Which building impressed you the most? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.